The question had been, would I go on the Artemis II, uh, exploration? Now, I've had opportunities to work around individuals who worked in hazmat, and I've also worked in opportunities with dealing with just drywall. Now, this is a mindset I have when it comes to something like the Artemis II, is that there's a lot of preparations that are required. This is a very exacting. The consequences of a lack of training, a lack of being focused is catastrophic. And so one of the benefits that I see, and why I personally would feel comfortable going on the Artemis II, is that this sort of expedition requires a great deal of training, a great deal of looking at the variables. And so because of this, the safety procedures, and you also have to consider the cost of failure is so massive that you're actually, in many ways, safer than a standard job. And in fact, I had the privilege, it was a number of years ago, I was in Vancouver, and Chris Hadfield, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, he's a Canadian astronaut. He did a speaking engagement down here. I had the privilege of being down there on this event. Now, I can't say I recall all the details about what he talked about, but this is what stuck with me, and it gives you an idea of the training and the discipline, which is very important in these sort of environments. What was asked of him was like, well, what were you thinking about when you're going to space? Now, as a tourist or somebody, just along for the ride, you might be just thinking, oh, I want to see out the window. I want to know what the G-forces are. I'm excited about this and that, weightlessness, and maybe, oh, yes, I'll do this job or that job. But what he said, or what stuck with me, and I'm sorry if I'm not saying 100% perfect, but this is what stuck with me, was that he said, the thought that was going through his mind is, what's going to kill me next? What's going to kill me next? Now, that sounds a little harsh, but it was a process where he had the discipline, where he was always thinking ahead. He was thinking proactively. He had spent years developing a mindset so that he never took a single step for granted. He was always thinking, and although this is a challenging thought process, a very disciplined thought process, but you can imagine that. What's going to kill me next? Each stage. Now, when you're around people that have devoted that level of focus on safety, that level of focus on success, that level of focus on trying, even though you can't have all the answers in advance. And yes, he had experienced things going wrong. He coped with it. He worked the problem. And so being with that sort of team, in that environment where you're truly trained and everyone's working together, there is no, it doesn't matter. No, it matters. Yes, I would feel quite confident if I could qualify. Now that's a key point. I'd have to qualify. I couldn't just say, you got to accept me. No, I have to qualify. So if you felt that you could trust the people you're working with, you could trust the systems that are in place, would you go to the Artemis II? Well, sometimes you got to think, how much effort is really being put into those safety protocols? And probably the more important question is not so much would you want to go, but would you actually be able to qualify to have that discipline? That's a pretty tough set of skills to develop. So I really respect the discipline, and also I think it's great that these individuals are getting to see things like the Earth from that perspective that none of us see. They're going to see it in 3D. They're going to see a perspective that very few people will get to experience. And they will be able to relate it to us, to expand our horizons. And already you will notice this, when they talk about stuff, it's not all staged. It has an impact. It's fascinating. So I leave that thought with you, and I'm going to talk more about the Artemis II. I'll talk in more detail about the Canadian economy when it comes to aerospace and space exploration and technologies, and whether maybe that is an industry that's growing, that's worth the effort to get involved with, that isn't something where it's a boom and bust. And let's face it, for space, you do not want boom or bust, right? So there's a little humor in there. So thank you for coming to my channel, and have a great day.